and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I'm your host, Andrew, joined as always by Ryan.
I'm an Acolyte.
Are you?
No.
And Steven.
I'm canceling Ryan.
No! My season
Set
2.
yourself up for that.
Sorry, Ryan, you're off the cast. It's just the rule now. That's it. So this is an unscripted episode. We are going to discuss, I'm going to say it's kind of a nebulous thought, is basically, so the Acolyte, Star Wars Acolyte on Disney Plus was just canceled recently. So we're time-stamping ourselves right now of when this was recorded.
Do you call it a cancellation or it wasn't renewed?
It wasn't, okay, yeah, we'll say it wasn't renewed because cancellation would indicate that it was intended for season 2
or they had already started work on it.
They had already started working on it and then they stopped it.
Right.
I don't think that there was any work happening on season 2 outside of maybe just like I think the
Darth
showrunner
Traps was working on his traps. That's
yeah.
I think she had pitched ideas for season 2, but I think that's as far as
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. So we'll just say it wasn't renewed.
Gotcha.
So I want to talk about, or I want to just lay the floor of discussion down for, we have all these streaming services, right? And we have new content coming out every single month. It feels like that of all these, like, I'll say flagpole style shows of like the Acolyte or Ahsoka or House of the Dragon, or all these kind of shows.
Prestige television.
Yeah, prestige television. There we go. And there's a lot of these studios, I'll say Netflix, Disney Plus, Max, whatever, where they'll come out with the season 1, and if it doesn't just perform spectacularly in every possible facet, they immediately just are like, no season 2. We're not even going to invest any money in this at all.
Right.
And it feels like that's kind of a mistake. Maybe?
I think absolutely. So, like, I know for sure on the Netflix side of things, they are the worst about just canon stuff, right?
Murder it left and right.
So, Glow was one of my favorite shows.
Glow was
on Netflix.
fantastic.
I loved it.
We got, 2 seasons?
2, maybe 3? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was 2 seasons, and then they stopped it after that.
They stopped it because COVID.
Yeah.
And when they saw how far down the road they were going to have to wait, Netflix just canceled it. And I'm like, just wait till COVID's over, dog.
Calm down, it'll be there.
That some of this really, I mean, I'm going to say the problem is really social media and the rotation of content that you have to use to stay relevant.
It can be, because again, we've talked about the war on people's time a lot. Like our podcast right now competes for everyone's time. Any TV show, any movie.
We don't compete for people's time. Listen to us while you're driving. You're not doing anything else then. Come on now.
Yeah, come on.
People, come on.
Don't be a weirdo. Just listen to our show.
There's literally no other podcast that exists.
No.
What are you talking about? We started podcasts.
0.
But like Neil Gaiman, creator of Sandman, right? Sandman season 1 on Netflix did really well. Yeah, but he encouraged everyone on social media. He was like, if you like this show,
want this to continue,
I need you to watch it in the first month it releases. And he goes, I need you to just put it on in the background of your house while you're cleaning. Just because he said basically in a roundabout way, he didn't get into the specifics because
they probably can't, yeah.
But it was like Netflix looks at how much it streams when it debuts and then how quick the fall off is and how long can you consistently hold people. Because if you can't pass like a month, you're done. You're not getting a season 2. It doesn't matter how big it was.
With Cowboy Bebop live action, now I'm not going to say the show was good because I don't think it was. But
we've got a review about that one.
The big thing is that it had some of the highest viewer numbers that they've had for a TV show of that kind forever. And they canceled it almost like a week after it came out.
I think with that one, and I'd have to look it up again to be for sure, but I think it's a completion rate too thing is also another. Like One Piece had a high completion rate, meaning people that started the show finished it.
High retention numbers.
Netflix
Bebop did not have a high
Netflix was looking at the critical, and this is another thing, you said social media, right? It's really easy now. If you wanted to leave a review of whatever, Acolyte, you have to go to someplace, log in, leave a review there. Nowadays, if you want to leave a review, you go on Twitter or Facebook and just type out what you thought and hit enter, and all of that builds up so much.
Yeah, because it has all the hashtags
and whatever,
and
everything.
Yeah,
they just find out, we're not popular.
Yeah,
or, people really didn't like this just organically. So if you were kind of in the middle ground and you just didn't like something, it's so easy now to just say, I didn't like it, but you wouldn't have gone to that effort before.
Yeah, because the problem is, and just as someone that runs an online shop for commerce, it's definitely one of those where the person, I mean, like, and this is just kind of known, but the person that has a bad experience is going to tell 10 people. The person that has a good experience is going to tell one person.
Right.
So anyone that doesn't enjoy the thing, unless it's just the most spectacular, like I'll say like Spider-Verse or Breaking Bad or something like that, where it's a little bit lopsided.
See, Breaking Bad is a good example though, because, and this is going back to, oh gosh, this isn't that long ago, the days of classic television seasons.
Oh gosh.
Right? Where shows would run over the course of a season. You'd get, 10, 15, 20 shows in a season.
Yeah, and you'd have one episode a week.
And a lot of times, it's not like they had made these episodes well ahead of time. They didn't have the whole season ready to go at the start of the season, right?
Correct.
So there was time for some pivots and course corrections in that development process.
It depends on the show, but sometimes,
right. I mean, it depends on, but there is, I think at the time that something like Breaking Bad was releasing, or like Seinfeld, not that Seinfeld needed course corrections because it had no course, but there was an opportunity there where if you had the social media feedback, you could make shifts. Because like watching the end of The Acolyte, there were a couple of things put in there where if I hadn't known all this was already made before people started talking about it, I would have been like, ooh, that would have been an effort to be like, save our show maneuver.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like looking at the formatting of The Acolyte for the first season. We watch, and I remember, because we have the reactions. You can go listen to those if you really want to, of our thoughts every week.
No, you really do want to. Come on.
Well, so, throughout the course of the show, we're like, man, when we got to the final episode, there are a lot of story threads in that last episode that should have been in episode 1 or 2.
Right.
And that would have kept audience retention or interest throughout the whole thing of like, ooh, there's this kind of like interesting political conflict going on. Or, this other character's doing this one thing. She's covering for this guy.
Right.
And they do all that in the final episode where if they would have formatted the show a little bit differently, then maybe it would have just had better retention numbers, better viewership, whatever.
Well, kind of going into that, right? So the article or one of the many articles that kind of helped us be like, oh, we should talk about this on Deadline, talks about how The Acolyte got off to a really strong start. So when it launched with its 2-episode premiere, it rose up to be the biggest series premiere on Disney Plus of the year.
Okay.
Right. Now, it wasn't a long time.
There's not a lot of content that came out this year so far.
But that's a good mark.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Right, yeah.
It was in Nielsen's top 10 charts.
But then it had like the lowest finale or something.
That's the big one. Is by the time you reach the finale, it's believed to be the lowest watch rate for any Star Wars series finale.
Wow.
Right.
And
which is crazy for like Book of Boba Fett.
That's an indictment.
Obi-Wan.
If you've got Book of Boba Fett out there.
Well, see, that's the thing. They have 2 episodes of The Mandalorian in there, which was, the cash cow for Star Wars.
The savior of the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Also, Book of Boba Fett was what, 6 episodes?
6? No, 7.
7?
Oh, man, I don't know anymore.
Maybe it was 8.
Hold on, y'all keep talking. I'll look.
But how many was Acolyte?
It was 8.
It was 8?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I wonder too if
I don't know. I feel that if I'm not going to say like the show like Acolyte was worthy of not getting a second season. I actually enjoyed most of what I watched. There's a lot of problems with it.
Yeah, it was one of those shows where I would characterize my feelings of like, I'm not clamoring for a season 2, but I would have watched it out of, I'm interested to see where they go. Because
you're interested enough.
Yeah. So Book of Boba Fett was 7 episodes, which is a weird number in and of itself, but whatever.
Well, they probably trimmed an episode to spread that budget.
No, they didn't trim it. It was 5 episodes, and they stuffed 2.
They stuffed 2 episodes in there.
Well, and I think in our review of The Acolyte, we talked about what are we going to do in a season 2? Because all of the characters that we kind of cared about or were interested in are dead by the end of the show.
Yeah.
So they kind of almost set themselves up for this of how are we going to keep going? Like you made your job harder than it kind of needed to be.
Well, so then that poses the question of I'm a showrunner, right? And I'm writing a show that is going to be on Disney Plus, Netflix, whatever.
Yeah.
And now as I'm writing the show, do I format it to be to basically be like, this is a one and done season 1, but I want to keep it going, so I need to have some level of breadcrumbs there.
See, I don't think that factors into anything on whether you get renewed.
Well, no, what I'm saying, I'm talking about from the showrunner's perspective do I try and have my whole creative vision in one season just so I can get my story out there?
So,
or do I format it to where this is like a long running broadcast show where I'm like, I have 4 seasons to do what I want?
I think it's depending on the content, obviously. There's some shows that would work that way.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you look at British television, a lot of their shows are set up where they're not expecting a season 2. So season 1, or series 1 as they call it, is
like a complete thing, complete story.
And then you can have room to do a 2, but you don't have to. There is a complete, and then if you get a series 3, a series 2, like you can see it. But they don't do like we do in America where we have like 6 to 8 seasons of shows.
Well, because like Breaking Bad is a good example of like that. Like you couldn't tell Walt's story in 3 seasons.
But each season does kind of have its own.
It does have its own arc.
Yeah.
But it's still open-ended to where you can't, like, the story isn't finished.
So my philosophy on this, right, is nothing's guaranteed. As a showrunner,
of course,
like it does not matter if Jeff Bezos says, "Hey, man, we're making eight seasons."
It's pronounced Bezos.
Whatever. We're making 8 seasons. It does not matter if your numbers don't perform. He doesn't care about that. He's going to cut you, right?
Yeah, of course. Right.
So my philosophy of this for a showrunner would be: you better burn as bright as you can from the go, right? You need to step out of this. It needs to have. I'm not saying that everything has to wrap up neatly in a bow, but we need to tell as complete a story as we can within reason, right? Because you don't. If let's say you are a showrunner and you create a show and it only makes it 1 season, you want to be the showrunner who created a show that lasts 1 season, that every couple of years the fans clamor at the studio, why didn't you make another? Why didn't you give us a movie with this? You don't want to be the one that when the next season doesn't get renewed, doesn't happen, people are like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you want to be the person who makes good enough content that people clamor for more, even if you don't know that you can find more because you put it all on the table already, right? Like you laid it out.
Well, okay, so then here's a question then, because we're talking about Star Wars. Let's talk about some more Star Wars.
Yeah.
So if viewership numbers are the only thing that matters, right?
Generally, subscriber numbers too.
We'll say viewership numbers and essentially positive reviews.
I would say it's
positive critical reviews.
It's
right?
a mixture of general so for Disney though it's even more complicated because you have merchandising. So you look at like Baby Yoda.
Well, no, but
Grogu,
that's the thing. I'm not even talking about Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, or anything like that. I'm talking about Andor.
Yeah,
Andor was one of the lowest viewed Star Wars shows. Period.
It was, but it still did better than Acolyte a lot of episodes.
But that's the thing, though. It was critically received really well.
Right. So Andor, I think what you see there is an opportunity to have a prestige show, right? Where maybe it didn't bring in the biggest bucks, but especially for a franchise like Star Wars, where let's be honest, most of what's made for Star Wars is mediocre. When you have something that gets that kind of critical reception, this is a feather in your cap. This is like going out and making a mediocre or not a movie that doesn't make a lot of money to go for an Oscar shot. Right.
Yeah, because we're getting a season 2 of that guaranteed. Like it's already in production. It's going to happen sometime later this year or earlier next year.
Factoring into that critical reception, right? When you go back and you look at Andor, the way it was made, the first 3 episodes
are a whole arc.
Were their arc. If that show had been canceled almost mid-season, you still almost could have gotten a decent feeling like you got a story out there, right?
Yeah.
And then they played that through with the next couple of episodes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because they had basically it's 9 episodes. You have 3 episode arcs for each one, and each one is its own encapsulated story that are part of a bigger story, which is what made the show so good.
Right. I think there's a few layers to that. There's 3 things, right? One, I think that once the numbers have been tallied, and I have to look at this article I found again to directly figure, I think Andor did have more viewers overall than The Acolyte.
Really?
Well, it was the lowest
until The Acolyte.
Well, just because it was. Because I don't think The Acolyte has the completion rate. So The Acolyte probably started with a higher peak than Andor did.
And then tailed out.
It tailed out, whereas Andor stayed. Does that make sense? Like Andor had...
That makes sense.
A medium the whole way through. Acolyte was like 10-7-5-2-1-0-0-0. You know,
1-0-1-0-0-1-0-1.
Now, don't quote me on that though. I feel like I read that somewhere though that when if you're looking at total viewership, Andor was like next to last.
Well, yeah, because I was just picking the low hanging fruit because I know that Andor didn't perform well viewership wise, but then everyone loved it that watched it.
But the second thing I was going to say, let me hit my 3 points. Number 2 is awards, right? So that's why I was so surprised when Netflix canceled Glow, is because it had won more Emmys than any other Netflix show, I think, at the time.
I mean, it's incredible.
It was racking up Emmy awards plus viewership. It had a ton of not as much as like Stranger Things, but a lot.
I think Glow, just because of the time, like, so COVID is a weird statistical skew.
It is.
And so I might put something in there with that too and say, well, maybe there was some kind of cost benefit analysis that was done coming out of COVID.
Could have been contract negotiations.
Or
it could have been
the contracts had sat still for so long that they couldn't guarantee they could bring all the pieces back. You just don't know.
And again, Glow may have had really good numbers for the first
3 seasons.
3? I thought it was more than 2.
I looked up because I had to remember Alison Brie's name because I was like, she's a fantastic actress.
Allie, forget Alison Brie's name. Come on.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She's great. The thing with the Glow may have been the drop off. Maybe like everybody watched it the first 2 weeks it's out, but it didn't, sustain. Maybe that's what it was.
It didn't carry far enough.
But it had high numbers. So the third thing is when you have a show like The Acolyte where they kill off characters, right? I feel like there are certain shows and certain showrunners that can execute something like Game of Thrones, let's say the first 5 seasons, where when you kill a bunch of people off, the stakes become high because you're like, oh my gosh, anybody could go.
Yeah.
But with Game of Thrones, the way they do it is even when your favorite character dies, you have 2 or 3 others that have been introduced.
Okay. One thing.
Yeah.
So Game of Thrones, the show, was obviously based off a book.
For sure.
So that definitely helps.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, too, is that because it's old TV,
right?
HBO could basically say, you're going to get 5 seasons or however many. After we get to that, then we'll talk about it.
And again, it was a phenomenon. It was like hyped up because the books were very popular. Like I'm not comparing the fact that it didn't get canceled. What I'm saying is when you have a show where you're taking risks, I think you need to execute everything on a level, a high enough level to where, like, you're fairly confident you're not going to get canceled because the writing is good, the acting is good, the editing is good, everything's good. So we can kill your favorite character, and you're still going to watch because everything else is good.
Well, but where I was kind of going with that is that like the cast for Game of Thrones was so big,
right?
Because you have, I just trying to remember back to season 1, you had at least 3 big storylines that had at least 5 different characters in each storyline that were interesting and well written and compelling. Where if you go back, and again, this is not a good comparison because Acolyte is not even in the same realm as Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But you go back to the Acolyte and you have 4 characters.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of Star Wars' problem as a whole, is that the more Star Wars material we get, the smaller the universe feels.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Game of Thrones just at a eye
it
level,
felt like it expanded.
Well, I mean, you go from being in Westeros to going across the sea. Like, you gain more, even though you are losing characters along the way. You're gaining more, and you're more is
learning
being
more about the world.
And the system.
But definitely because this was because Game of Thrones was adapted from a book, there's a lot more leeway that they have writing wise to where they can see some weird pitfalls that happen in the book that they can possibly alter or massage a little bit to make it a little bit better. This was coming from essentially an original writing perspective, so it's a little bit different.
It's also harder.
I guess I was just trying to think of a show where some of my favorite characters have died.
I don't disagree with the comparison, especially for like character deaths, because both shows do have that in common, where it's like, well, maybe no character's safe. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, to Acolyte's credit, right in our reactions, we even reacted to the idea of, wow, like they're willing to take this risk, like, bravo. It's just you have to shore up something else around it. You can't end a show and say, well, of the 4 remaining characters that we have, that we've been introduced to, that we know, only one of them is sort of interesting, and we haven't really learned much about that character at this point. So
so then you as a showrunner, what do you even do going into making any kind of show at this point?
So I'll hand out one tip, and this is an example.
I mean, outside of just make good shows, like
that's obviously
super easy.
Get good,
just plan better.
Skill issue.
This is an example my wife gave me, and I wish I'd written it down because I don't know the name of the show anymore. But it was a show that came out. They had one season, ended on a cliffhanger.
Firefly.
It was not Firefly. This is a modern streaming era.
Oh, okay.
Firefly was one of the shows I was thinking of where you have a dedicated fan base that every couple of years is why didn't you make more? You know?
Well, that's all Fox's fault. That was a whole
Fox is just so good at messing
they're
up
just
anything.
another production company.
Yeah.
No, but like Fox canceled Arrested Development, Firefly, and Family Guy in the same season that year. That was an insane year for Fox executives, which then Family Guy went to Adult Swim, got crazy popular, came back. Firefly got a movie. Arrested came back eventually on Netflix, and it was not as good, but whatever. But like that 1 year, Fox was like, "Nah, dude, all these things that rule, we're canceling. Get them out. Get them out."
But the point I was getting to here is that show. I can't remember what show it was. Whatever show it was, I think it was on Netflix.
Describe it.
I don't know it.
Okay, cool. Never mind.
I didn't know what it was.
Steven is terrible at this.
No. See, the thing is, I didn't see the show. My wife gave me the name of it and said what the internet
in one ear right after
Sure did.
Listen to your wife, Steve.
Oh my God. Either way, the season ended on a major cliffhanger. There was no true resolution.
Yeah.
Well, people online are saying, well, yeah, it was good, but I wouldn't tell you to invest time into it because you're not going to get the satisfaction.
The OA.
So
the OA, I think, is the show.
Is that it? Maybe.
Well, because I've never watched it because Britt Marling is in it and I love her. I love her movies. She usually has really heady sci-fi stuff, like really small short films. The OA was like this big series, and I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be good." I
actually do remember this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is what she was referring to.
Well, it's one of them. It ends on a cliffhanger, apparently, and then they never renewed it for season 2. And everyone's like, "No, like it's not. It's you told half the story."
So
I've never started it because I know that it's not going to get the resolution.
Where I'm going with this is beyond just skill issue, get good, make better shows. Is don't set yourself again. It's the complete arc, right? Andor, you have an arc in 3 episodes, an arc in 3 episodes. You have to. You can't set up and then never pay off. There's no satisfaction, right?
So there's a fun story here, and I have to stay on brand because I'm Andrew, and I have to talk about anime.
No, what?
1997 Berserk.
For everyone at home, this is the drinking game. Take a shot every time Andrew mentions anime.
And if you're in your car, 2 shots.
No.
Please don't recommend drinking while driving.
If you have alcohol in the car already, I don't know what to tell you, but
you should
don't drink it. You're driving.
Keep the top on.
But no, so 1997 Berserk, they had a whole full course series, so 26 episodes.
Yeah.
And it basically covered the first full major arc of the manga.
Yeah.
And it ends on what I would consider probably one of the biggest cliffhangers in anime history. And then they just never had a season 2 until 2016. And then they came out with a horrible rendition of
all
CGI.
CG probably.
Just terrible CGI.
I think I remember the trailer for that
when you say, when I say bad CGI, this isn't this doesn't look that good. No, this is objectively terrible.
Objectively bad, yeah.
And the issue is I mean, for all of us that didn't read the manga or whatever, we just had no idea what happened.
Right, you're just left out in the cold for 2 decades.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
And they've since kind of been redoing the series again because the 2016 version was just terrible. So then they've redone the movies of the original arc, and now they're now they're going back into another one that's coming out 2025, I think, that's going to actually continue the story with hopefully actual budget now.
Well, one can dream.
I think,
but it does help for them because again, this semi sounds like a bit of. So a lot of anime gets the kind of, I don't want to call it the Game of Thrones treatment, but they have the advantage of you have a source material, right?
Yes, most of the time.
If for some reason the one piece of anime just
stopped.
Ended yesterday or whatever, the story would probably still get completed via manga.
Correct.
You would think. Or with most, or not most, I shouldn't say most, but with many anime, the anime doesn't really get started until the manga is either complete or it's obvious it's going to cross the finish line.
Yeah, so you actually run into that with stuff I'll say Full Metal Alchemist. So back in 2006, Bone Studio did the original series and they got up to episode 28 and then they caught up to the manga and they're like, well, we got to keep going. So we just make up our own story.
Well, now you're playing the reverse Game of Thrones of we outran George R.R. Martin because who couldn't? And suddenly we can't write.
Yeah, and then basically, fast forward another 4 years and they redo the entire thing because the manga's about to finish and then they make Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. and then you have a full, complete story.
Right.
But now you have just 2 Full Metal Alchemists that just exist.
Which is just confusing, and Netflix is like, we recommend Full Metal Alchemist. She's like, I don't know which one this is. I don't trust you.
I don't trust
Watch
you.
Brotherhood. It's really good.
Brotherhood's really good.
Yeah.
So for the Acolyte, to like continue the story, I wonder, could they do like a book
Or a comic book.
or a comic book?
Comic book
that's-
could definitely be.
always and the thing is, one, it's a way to resolve story leads, and like the Acolyte, I almost would say, because I don't feel like it left you on much of a cliffhanger, just because the continuing threads were probably the weakest characters.
They were tenuous.
Well, because that's the thing is, like, they weren't developed because they weren't written into the show to be in season 1.
Well, and I would also say they weren't developed because the show had a pacing issue. We harped on that a lot.
Well, yeah, because we could actually just talk about the length of episodes.
Right. Which, again, you go back to old school TV or just modern anime right now still says, hey, a season is 26 episodes, then 24 minutes or 22 minutes long.
Right.
And that's all you get.
That's it. We bump it out, and then we can map out exactly the arc we need. While as, like, I can't complain about saying, well, you only get 8 to 10 episodes and they're all going to be 45 minutes or whatever, because it's still technically a lot of runtime. But when you start having this, hey, we're not positive, like first season, Wheel of Time had a lot of other problems, but they ran into this issue as well, where COVID caused them just to straight up just lose 2 episodes in their budget, basically.
Yeah,
right.
And Acolyte almost kind of felt like it had that kind of constraint placed on it,
but they didn't have anything
exist.
else.
Yeah, it just
they
didn't
have
happen.
anything else to be there. So it could have been either a shorter show or a much longer show to give us more time with the characters to care about them. But the problem is the formatting was still not good enough because I'm assuming that the showrunners assumed that they would get a second season.
They're going to have time for this. Yeah,
and with the modern streaming landscape, I don't think you can do that.
Well, and I do think
it's not even
unless
that.
you're Stranger Things, it's every season.
To some extent now, this is maybe a more so I think when the show was made, because the show was being written, I think pre-COVID.
Really?
I think it was pitched in 2019, and so the concept happened, and it had time to kind of marinate, obviously, because it wasn't like, thankfully, they weren't filming, and then COVID happened, and they had to stop, and now the show cost $500 million for that reason. It still costs a lot of money, but they run into the issue because the production cycle is so long that when the show was being kind of really pitched, Star Wars was unshakable. It was still a big money maker.
That is true, yeah.
It's like, how could we ever go wrong with it? It's Star Wars. The nerds will line up and buy it. And then in
Book
the last...
of Boba Fett happened, then Obi-Wan happened.
The last couple of years, the outlook on Star Wars has really soured. And I don't like all the fan woke nonsense off to the side that goes on with this.
That's the thing. It's not it. Just make a good show and people will watch it.
The quality has suffered, and I think part of the reason it suffered is because everyone goes into, I'm making a Star Wars, this is bulletproof, and that's just not a guarantee anymore.
But I mean, that goes with the same mentality that Disney has with Marvel.
Yeah,
they go into and they're like, well, after Endgame, and they were just like, oh, we can just print
We're
money.
unstoppable.
We can put out 3 of these a year, add in a couple TV shows, and a couple of years go by. Whoa, hold on now.
Course correct. Where's RDJ? Get him out. The couple things here, right? With Star Wars and the Acolyte specifically, I was trying to talk to somebody the other day at work. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they're not a Star Wars fan. They don't understand. Never really watched any of them. Got into it.
And that is totally fine.
Sure. But I was trying to...
technically normal
they were
most of human history.
a question about the Acolyte because they had heard of it. They saw it on social, whatever. And I was trying to explain to them, like, we got 3 movies. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to count, like, extended fiction books or anything. Right? Then it was like, how many years before Phantom Menace came out? Like 16? 16 years. We didn't get anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like,
the Ewok movies.
We're not talking. We're talking true media.
I'm saying in theater. Yeah.
True media. Wow, you're being really harsh to both printed books and comic books right now.
Those aren't even real.
Something that general audiences would mass see, right?
Yeah.
Consume. Then you got the prequels, and then we got nothing for
what was it? Nothing for 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah, 2015.
2005, 2015.
Okay, so 10 years.
So we tighten the cycle up.
Then we have gotten pow, 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 like show of 2 shows a year, 3 seasons of Mandalorian.
We've gotten 5 movies, 6 movies.
Yeah.
6 movies? No, 5. 5.
The 3 and then Solo,
Solo,
Rogue One. And
that's it. Just 5.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just 5.
If we're forgetting a movie, it can't be that.
It can't be good enough.
Yeah. 5 movies, and then how many series? 3 seasons of Mando.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Andor.
7.
Acolyte.
So voice them out loud. So 3 seasons of Mando gets you to 3, right?
Then we have Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett.
Andor.
Ahsoka.
Acolyte. That's 8.
Oh, okay.
And then on top of that, I guess in between we got the Clone Wars cartoons.
Well, and then we
and
also have
things like
Bad Batch and
we got Bad Batch
Rebels, Resistance.
Rebels, Clone Wars.
So I would say when you say you have the prequels and then you have 10 years, you have nothing in between. Like there was, the Jenny Tartakovsky Clone Wars TV show. Then there was the CGI Clone Wars.
But again, I would still
Rebels.
guarantee that that's not near as popular.
No,
as
well, yeah, that's the thing.
Because mainstream appeal, it's not nearly the level that.
Because like the way I like to look at Star Wars, there are different levels of fans, and the only fan that Disney truly cares about are the ones that buy all the merch, which are basically the hardcore fans that watch every single show that comes out, regardless of what it is, and then my dad. Right. And my dad goes to go see the movie.
Specifically, and that's Andrew's dad.
He sees just the movies. You didn't put it out in theaters, don't care.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. He doesn't watch it he doesn't watch the TV shows or anything like that. He just goes to go see the movies. And now, that is a ticket in the seat.
Now, I will say, talking to our friend and patron of the show, Nick, there is a danger in the last couple of shows they've put out, because like when we watched Ahsoka and Acolyte, I think both times talking with him just kind of, in our Discord, free promotion, he said, these are really made for the hardcore fan, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, but if you're going to say, we didn't get enough views, so we're canceling you, well, then you can't rely on making this for the hardcore fan, because that core base is only so big.
100%. So what I was going to say is, like, what I was telling this coworker was, like, we went from getting like these big gulfs of like, not a whole lot
time to breathe.
We're just like inundated with it to the point that it doesn't feel special anymore. Like I remember when the Force Awakens trailer dropped, and I got like goosebumps, when the
crying
Force theme hits.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my god.
That's a little
and
much,
now it's like they're making another show. I'm like, all right, whatever, And it's kind of the same with
gonna be?
The MCU of like when those movies were first coming out. It was like, oh my gosh, we're actually getting these characters I grew up reading. I thought we'd never, after seeing what they did with the X-Men movies, we're never getting an Iron Man movie. Oh my gosh, it's really good. This Robert Downey Jr. guy's coming back. I love it.
He's killing it.
Way to go, Rehab. And then like everything continued to get pretty good. So like it's the same thing that Disney has with the MCU now is with Star Wars. I think there's a green lighting problem at Disney where they're clearing.
No, there was a green lighting
problem. Right. So that's what I'm getting at.
Drying up right now.
Chapek was the problem there because he just wanted quality. He wanted quantity, not quality.
Yeah. It reminds me of the same thing that happened. I think was it John Lasseter who came in and stopped all the direct to VHS animated movies like Aladdin 2, Aladdin 3.
Was that you're talking about like Eisner days?
Was it Eisner? I thought it was someone that wasn't the president, but it was like somebody that was like over animation.
I think Eisner was the one that really pushed the direct to DVD.
Well, because
the Aladdin 3,
Hercules
2.5 or whatever.
Because someone came in after that and stopped all that because they were like, we're watering down our brand. We're supposed to be these prestige.
And I think that's the big problem for, I'll say, these big production companies like Disney or HBO or whatever, that they have these IPs that have cost them, say $4 billion for Star Wars, or I don't know how much it cost them for Marvel.
Pennies on the dollar.
Now they have this, they have this IP that has to make money to exist, but then they're watering down the brand so much that as we as the audience, whenever they come out, it's like, we're gonna do the new Doctor Doom show with our Robert Downey Jr. I'm like, okay, cool, like good for you, I guess. But like it used to be it's special because there was just nothing there.
Right, where it was something unique of like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Now we have opened up into a different era of movies and TV where like we can get a lot of different little stories like She-Hulk that I never thought I'd see a She-Hulk TV show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad this exists for me, the She-Hulk fan. I'm like, I never would have in a million years be like, oh, they're definitely doing a She-Hulk show. That's the most niche thing on earth. But and a Moon Knight show with Oscar Isaac, I would have been like, you're crazy. No one's ever going to make this. They're trying to be really good.
Was fun.
I know.
Fun,
So like I'm not against the idea of greenlighting risky projects, is what I'm trying to get at, right? I think it's a situation where, specifically with the Acolyte, it was an execution issue.
Definitely.
Where I think there were some solid ideas there. And the way it felt like, honestly, that Leslie Headland, was that the showrunner? It felt like she needed someone else from Disney to kind of help her wrangle the whole vision into something a little more cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Or she had someone from Disney who was doing that and she didn't want them doing that. They're like, no. Trust me. We can push this into season 2. It'll be great.
Maybe.
You just don't.
Who knows?
Like,
yeah,
it's one of those things with studio interference. You can look at something and be like, studio should have interfered on that. And other things you're like, studio shouldn't have interfered on that. You know, it's too late.
No, that's very true. And I don't know what happened in the writer's room.
Yeah,
I just feel like after seeing the show and seeing the way it paced out, like we talked about it in our quick reactions, like there's so many episodes that were an entire episode was a flashback, and this could have been spread out throughout,
and to be more interesting to where you don't have the in-between scenes that don't really mean that much, that are just padding time. Yeah. Then you can take that and make all the interesting scenes and splice those in as backstory or whatever, and flashbacks to make it a little bit more engaging for the viewer. And if you put that in on the first 2 episodes where you have this already building tension of trying to figure out the mystery of both timelines.
Well, see, now we're back to the water cooler argument, right? We had an episode a long time ago now about binge releases versus weekly releases.
Water cooler talk is important to keep shows alive.
Keep the water cooler alive.
The thing is, if you're going to commit to a weekly release schedule, which is what Disney Plus has done for like they've started with the hybrid, right? They put out a couple episodes and then it becomes a weekly.
Yeah.
You have got to have something gripping within that to keep people talking about it, because that's your engagement. That is what keeps the viewers coming back. You can't give it all away immediately.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and just put this in for the naysayers who are like, well, remote work is killing the water cooler. No, it's not. There are people that have teams and stuff like that. They have their own specific channels where they go talk about movies and TV shows every single week.
You can buy your own water cooler on Amazon and have it in your living room, and you can have your own water.
He's worked from home for years. He's got one right over there.
My whole house is a water cooler. So something else too with the Acolyte, speaking of like episode length specifically, it's weird because it's one of the few shows I've ever watched in my life where there are certain episodes that go, wow, this really was not long enough, and others that are like, this was way too long.
You could have finished this. Wrap it up.
Usually a show is consistently either like, man, I wish each episode was a little longer or shorter, and this one has literal entire episodes. I'm like, you could have added 10 minutes of that over the past first 4, made those a little longer and felt better, and then gotten rid of this entirely.
We had one episode in the middle of the season that was like 24 minutes of actual runtime. And it was like, hold on, so slow down, guys.
What are we doing?
You only have so many episodes to work with, apparently. Like, come on.
So it's kind of funny because you run into the kind of issue that some like longer running shonen series have, or anime shows.
Keep it going, pad it out, filler it up.
Where they well, not even that, where they have recap for the first like 4 or 5 minutes of the episode, and you lose.
Is it Naruto that does that?
Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, doesn't matter. They're all the same.
A lot of them do it. Yeah.
And whenever you have those kind of things where, like, me as a viewer, even if I have the ability to binge the entire thing, it's just a pain for me to go through and like, all right, well, where's the timestamp on this for me to skip this recap? Because now it's just more of a chore to watch it.
Right.
And that's what a lot of the, like, some of the Acolyte felt like, what even some episode of, like, Ahsoka felt like. Yeah. And I'm trying not to like only talk about Star Wars here, but they're like one of the biggest defenders in the room.
Well, and it's one of those things too where it's such a big IP, right? And I think when The Mandalorian first came out was my first real introduction to the idea of, shows are going to be as long as they need to be.
Right.
And at the time,
like, this is a great idea.
Right. At the time, I thought, how cool is that for showrunners?
They're not shackled by broadcast standards.
They're not limited to how they can do anything they want. And what you start to find out with this is, if you let George Lucas do anything he wants, you get the prequels. So maybe
I like the prequels, so fight me.
Well, I mean,
step outside.
Hold on. Okay, fine. If you let
it real quick.
If you let George Lucas do anything he wants, you get Attack of the Clones.
Okay, that's fair.
There it is. Right? There it is. Got him.
So what I'm getting at is sometimes, like if Spielberg, if the stupid shark animatronic had worked, Jaws would not have been a very good movie.
Well, if they had the technology for Alien, then Ridley Scott would have maybe not had one of the genre-defining masterpieces, because he had the budget to have someone not in a suit.
Art has to happen with some form of limitation. Like if you don't put any limitations on the art, you're never going to be creative.
I don't even think it's the constraint necessarily. I do agree that constraints a lot of times that for me
do breed creativity.
Was the biggest thing when the Arrested Development show came back to Netflix. Was they did this different format, a different way of telling the overall season. Each episode was like whatever length it needed to be, and I was like, it needs that 24-minute with commercial break end caps to like
because you
keep the comedy flowing it needs to.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Seinfeld did so well, because it was on broadcast TV, and you have these commercial breaks where they know that they're going to have a commercial break in 10 minutes, so they can have a joke end there.
That's a natural high point of you hit them with the cliffhanger. If it's like 24, right? You hit them with the cliffhanger. Is he still alive? You know, there's the commercial break. Run to the bathroom and get your popcorn quick before you find out. You know, whereas now you just don't. You don't have those inflection points built into your show.
With the episode link thing, though, like with the first season of Mandalorian versus like a Acolyte, I think the difference is if the creator knows what they're doing and they know how to maximize and utilize the time, specifically, then you can have episodes that are one's 30 minutes, one's an hour long, right? And you do that because it justifies it. It needs it. With the Acolyte, it felt like some of these episodes didn't justify their runtime, short or long.
Some of them,
Well, or you flip it to get away from Star Wars, right? You have season 4 of Stranger Things, where it was, hey, here's 3 movies.
Yeah, it was it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour just episodes where it was like, oh, cool, I'm just watching a movie tonight. Got it.
Right, but it still worked. You know, and that's
again, if you execute,
because the thing is, like, season 4 of Stranger Things was probably one of my favorite seasons because you had the episode length with quotation marks, where it was just the length it needed to be to tell that story for the episode, and then it was still just linked together over the course of 5 episodes or whatever.
Maybe some of the issue then is if you have like that crystal clear vision, you can make it work, but if you're not positive, then having constraints can kind of form what you want to make. We're kind of getting far afield.
We're still talking about skill issue here.
We are still talking about skill
issue.
We
are, honestly. I think that's a lot of it. But okay, so like back to the Acolyte real quick, just because I think it's
kind
more
of a microcosm of like the problem.
Well, it's high profile because it's a Star Wars show. Like the Glow doesn't get renewed. That sucks. But like it's Glow.
Yeah,
like, most people haven't heard of it. You know? Yeah. A Star Wars show gets canceled.
Every time you say Glow, so Glow was the female wrestling.
Yes. The gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
It was incredible.
So good.
You keep saying it. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know what that is. Well, no, I'm actually making a point with it, right?
Yeah.
Like when you say, the Acolyte was canceled. Well, I know what you're talking about. When you say Glow, like it was such a small piece on its own that when it got canceled and y'all were debating seasons, I was like, man, I remember commercials for this. That's about it. It's just not.
Mark Maron.
So good. Oh my gosh. Now I want to go rewatch Glow.
So good.
Hopefully they make a movie. That'd be a good way to do it. Okay. Back to the Acolyte though. Do you think it's because it doesn't have any ties to the Star Wars universe? Because like when you think of the other shows,
it doesn't need to have any ties. That's the whole point of Star Wars. But then Disney doesn't understand.
Well, that's the whole thing that Star Wars needs to know is it needs to expand.
Stop time. I'm not saying it has to. Let me finish. No. I'm not saying it has to have ties to be good. I'm saying for audience retention and attention and ratings and viewership.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Every other show, Obi-Wan, based on Obi-Wan.
Not good.
Book of Boba Fett. But it still did better numbers than this. Even Andor did.
Because
it's based off Rogue One.
Ian McGregor and Hayden Christensen.
See, I think
when Ahsoka, based on something we've seen.
Hold on. When you bring up something like Book of Boba Fett, right? Boba Fett, the coolest character ever, has like 3 lines in the original trilogy. Yeah. Nobody cares. The guy looks rad. And then we learned more about him. What we learned was we didn't want to learn more about him, right?
Yeah, he's old. He has kidney stones. He doesn't get a back attack.
Yeah. It's like there's a risk with that when you play with the expectations of a big name character.
Yeah.
But like Obi-Wan, sure. Like again, Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, like
Darth
Andor.
Vader,
You look at Andor, technically it's a spin-off show. Like Rogue One isn't Andor's story.
Yeah.
Right? He's the secondary character.
When they announced Andor, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, why?
But I think Andor attracts the type of crowd that liked Rogue One. And that type of crowd is the type that would probably stick with Andor.
Crowd is intelligent and handsome.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah. Debonair.
Well, but see, that's the thing.
Well-dressed.
I think that Disney thinks that we need to have direct connections to the original trilogy and the original saga story, whatever.
So why
the fans don't need that or want that.
So why do you think the Acolyte didn't resonate with general audiences?
Because of Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Andor, I guess.
So you think people are just burnt out?
I think a lot of it isn't necessarily...
In Mandalorian Season 3.
You had fall off of the people who were like, I'll give him a chance. Ugh, I regretted my chance. Whatever, right? Yeah. But I think at the point that Acolyte hit, they'd already lost a lot of the, not Andrew's dad, but close to it fans who would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to flip this on.
Yeah.
Because when they were like, Obi-Wan, I'm going to flip this on, they're like, what is this, right?
Right.
Yeah, because that's...
So you think they burned all the goodwill up
absolutely
before people even got to Acolyte?
And I would say... the attempts that are made in some of these shows to connect it, like the stupid controversy, I'm going to put that in quotes, around the whole Key Adimundi, right, where he made an appearance.
Oh, yeah.
And then the hardcore fans got out of whack because it's not canon. He's the wrong age. Shouldn't have appeared. Like, just... if you want to include a character of that species, it doesn't have to be the named person that we all know, because now no one... who's in a general fan base is going to notice or care, and you've also enraged the hardcore. Like, it's like throwing Yoda in there. You don't necessarily need to do these things in the process.
So I understand that this is an unscripted, and we did not mean for this to go into like an anti-Star Wars tirade. Which, that's just part of the unscripted thing. It just kind of goes where it goes.
Sure.
And this will be the last thing I talk about Star Wars for this episode.
I thought he was going to take a vow of silence.
Oh, man.
I'll never talk about Star Wars again.
It's really hard to do a podcast when a third of the cast
What's he about to do?
But what I think needs to happen, and I know that they just had D23 and they announced a whole bunch of other Star Wars projects.
Sure.
So whatever I'm about to say has absolutely no meaning on anything like that. It's just an opinion on the internet, and guess what? There's a lot of them.
They're everywhere,
but I really think what needs to happen is they need to finish whatever projects they already had greenlit. So we have Skeleton Crew coming out. The trailer for that actually looks kind of fun. That's with Jude Law, kind of Goonies in space, apparently.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Fingers crossed. Maybe this one will come through. I don't know. So
that's one of the episodes is being directed by the Daniels, who did Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Ooh.
But you finish whatever's there. So we have Andor Season 2, that, and then I guess the Mandalorian movie or whatever that they're going to do.
There's a Rey movie coming too.
Something like that. But then I think you stop. You stop making stuff for 3 or 4 years minimum.
They're never going to do that.
They're never going to do it. But you stop making it, and you give people a little bit of time to breathe.
Make them miss it.
Yeah.
Then you
come back with Mandalorian Season 4 or some other thing that you're going to do that's going to be your new flagship tent pole that you stake in the ground.
Take a couple year break, and then you come out and you drop Thrawn on them or something. Yeah, come on.
Because like that, I think the problem is, and I'm not even going to say fatigue, because I don't think it's fatigue, because if you make good shows, people will watch them.
Sure, yeah.
If the product is consistently good, there's no such thing as fatigue. There's just more.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's just kind of my opinion on it.
I think the same argument that a lot of people made on the internet about the MCU as well was post Endgame. Like once they started seeing what was coming out post Endgame, people were like, "Hey, y'all should have just taken a break, let it rest for a while, and then do a reboot. You finally get rights to the X-Men or whatever. Come in from that angle. Like let's do something else for a little while."
Well, it definitely felt like that run up to Endgame. They had maybe after Phase 1. A plan.
Yeah, right? once Iron Man took off and some of the other films started to really bang, they're like, oh, we got something going.
They were
we can make this work. Put it together.
Here's the shapes, and it ends here. And then after Endgame, it's just like spaghetti.
Yeah.
They don't know what's going to work.
Because multiverse is a big problem.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
They make fun of it a lot in Deadpool 3.
They should. What's funny is we were kind of talking about how it gets. I don't think we use the words like bland or stale, but a little formulaic. Right? You get too used to what happens, and then you need a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I do think that's one of the reasons why something like Deadpool and Wolverine has popped off to the extent that it did at box office.
Highest grossing R-rated movie of all time.
It's over $1 billion, right?
That's great. I'm glad that it's very successful. However, as we get further on and more people are going to go see these movies and that kind of stuff, and is more accessible for people to go and watch them compared to what it was, let's say, in the 90s or whatever, the box office numbers are always going to grow.
They should always
because tickets are more expensive than what they were last time.
Yeah. Well, my point with that was...
I don't like those statistics when people are like, it's the best thing that's ever happened. And it's like, well, cool. Yeah, because that's just what it is.
Because it better be, because the line only goes up, right?
The only reason for me it's so significant is it's a Disney R-rated movie.
Oh, for sure.
Something that we thought they would. I thought when they bought Fox, well, there's no more Deadpool movies.
Done,
we're out.
Yeah, and that's really that's not me discounting Deadpool. I haven't watched it or anything like that.
I just want to make sure that Disney learns the right lesson of
they won't.
Hey, they clearly don't. But it's like, hey, some of these R-rated properties are fine. They're going to make you money. Don't kill them.
The point
we'll see.
I was kind of getting at with it was, because I know, Andrew, you're not the biggest fan of Ryan Reynolds, right?
I mean, he's
I thought he was going to say me.
I'm not a big fan of all Ryans.
All Ryans. They're terrible.
Well, I mean, that character, especially the Deadpool character, it can be grating. For some people, it
for sure.
Clicks, and for other people, it doesn't hit. So the thing is, when the MCU has been on this run that feels kind of stale, and you get hit with this kind of film, oh, what a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
What a change. If that MCU run had been the ADHD that is the Deadpool property for the whole time, we would be exhausted.
We'd be tapped
and we'd
out,
get some kind of really slow classic formula MCU, and it'd
be a breath of fresh
billion
air.
and a half easy on whoever character you choose, and we'd all be like, what a breath of fresh air, so you got to balance that out.
Yeah, and I think one of the big problems of why Disney feels that they have to just keep coming out with stuff outside of line has to go up and they need to make money is really, it's social media has really changed how all of us, we as people, consume media, because we have 14 different screens looking at us at all times, and they're all pulling our attention in 14 different directions.
Yeah.
And now the only way for a media company to have any kind of relevancy is to just have more content, even if it's crap.
Right. I think really this entire conversation would be framed so much differently if this had gotten canceled and it was, let's say, The Acolyte was as good as Andor season 1.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
we would be
a very different
furious.
conversation.
People would be up in arms. We're not. We're kind of like, it stinks. Yeah,
well,
I think that
it's like, I wanted to see where it would go, but that's fine.
I was genuinely curious, but I was more like, okay, let's see if they can course correct a lot of the things they did wrong in season 1.
This is one of those where you watch the, I don't know, the Olympics or whatever, and they're doing some kind of pole vault, an acrobatic sport that I can never ever do, and you watch them do something. I can do that, but you watch them do something,
power walking,
and you're like, oh man, that's a big risk. Can they land that?
Sitting intently.
If they do or they don't, it doesn't matter. Almost, right? Because not that I could ever get up there and do it, but you're going to see it happen and just be like, "Ooh, you shouldn't have done that. You took a risk."
Oh yeah,
right?
It's the same thing. We are definitely armchair quarterbacks over here of this very complicated managing all these employees and writing all these episodes. We're like, you should have done it better.
The joke is when you're watching the Olympics and you see some dude that jumps off and does the high dive or something like that, and you're like, oh, that was a crap dive. Absolutely awful.
I've watched 30 minutes of this. I'm already an expert.
I'm already ready to weigh in.
How could you let your arms get out of line like that? That clearly caused the splash.
This poor guy that's,
Didn't you train your whole life for this?
Well, and I mean, I really didn't know where I was going with the risk there for a moment.
We didn't either.
But that was kind of the interest in Acolyte, I guess, was when it finished, it's like, boy, we took a lot of risk here, and I don't know where we're going, but I'd be intrigued to see if you can stick this, but at the same time, I'm like, man, this is ambitious.
Yeah.
I think the wrap up on Acolyte is it got canceled because low viewership numbers, and the reason it had low viewership numbers is you can take risks and you can do stuff, but you have to execute other things on a certain level. You can't take a risk on everything. And I'm not saying they took a risk everywhere. It's just like if you have a weak characterization and one of the actors isn't delivering because they weren't written correctly or they're not experienced enough, and you have weird editing and weird pacing, and you're taking risks, we're
getting too wild.
Too many
the
layers.
funny thing is you have obviously Netflix and Disney that are very cancel happy, and then you have Jeff Bezos that will dig his stick in the ground as far as it possibly can to say, I am going to give as many seasons of Rings of Power that I can get.
I canceled
so much money.
I'm going to get rid of my space company to keep doing this stupid show.
My wife divorced me because I won't stop making Wheel of Time, and by God, she took half my money, and I'm still making it.
I'm still making it.
You're like, good Lord, man.
All right. So
Has Rings of Power season 2 come out yet?
No, it comes out at the end of this month or end of August.
Just the time when we're actually recording this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, literally already timed.
This is how wild it is, though. You could have told me yes, it already come out, and no one cared, and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Well, no, I will say the trailer for season 2 does look better than season 1,
sucky.
Season 1 wasn't the best. So that means that if it's better than season 1,
line went up.
Then line went up.
By the transitive property.
I mean, the best trailer that they've released for Rings of Power was just the pouring the molten metal teaser that they did. It's like, they did that as a teaser. It's like, then the show begins and you get the intro. It's like, why wasn't that the intro? You already made it. It's right there.
Just copy the files over.
Oh my God.
All right, that does sound like we're wrapping up here.
We could go forever.
Oh yeah, I know. We keep talking, but so before we go, we have to talk about our Patreon
for just $1 $1 a month.
Jeff Beesbox.
That's like not even a percentage point.
Oh, it doesn't even register. He could subscribe. He could be 10,000 of our subscribers, and he could still just be like, that's not even an episode.
He wouldn't even notice the money.
Yeah, wouldn't even know. It's rounding error.
I don't like Starbucks. A brand new Starbucks opened up 2 minutes from my house. So this morning I go, I need caffeine. I go, whatever. I'll just pop in here. I'll get something basic. I'll be fine. I said, give me the, I don't know,
the Pike or whatever.
Give me the normal coffee.
Yeah, they don't have it, but I was like, give me. I found something on the menu that's got the least amount of flavorings in it. That I'll take that, and it was $7. Not even for a large.
It wasn't even the biggest size.
I don't even know what they call tall, whatever. Getting a normal naming convention. Anyways.
Grande, Vente, tall. They all mean large.
$7 for a mediocre coffee that I drank angrily on my drive into work. $1 a month. A month gets you access to all of our bonus episodes that are a different format than this. We go crazy. We rank like Chip tier lists. We ask ChatGPT for love. We give love advice to ChatGPT.
We even fight presidents and monarchs.
Yes,
we might have to fight the czar next.
Oh no! I was like, what if we fought CEOs?
That's it. You're hearing it in media res as we just came up with another Patreon bonus idea.
Take on Jeff Beesbox.
We're gonna fight Henry Ford.
Bill Gates.
Henry Ford's going to whip out his stopwatch and go to town on us.
Yeah, we need like the top 50 CEOs of all time or something.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I love this. Okay. Anyways.
Write that down.
Write it down. We have a lot of good stuff for just $1. You get access to our bonus episodes, our commentaries. You can participate in Patreon picks polls where we like have, hey, what kind of heist movie you want to see us review? And then you vote and we review it. That's how we did Ocean's 11. It was fantastic.
I'm so distracted. I just see the Matrix.
You're just seeing it, yeah.
But it is the single best and most direct way to support the show. If you like what you hear, that is how we pay our hosting fees, how we pay to go out and buy a bunch of sodas to taste test on air, all kinds of crazy and fun
If you
stuff.
like what we do, please support us on Patreon. If you've been supporting us at the $1 tier for a while, maybe bump it up to $2. We do good stuff here. We're having fun. Come on.
That's still not the price of that mediocre
Exactly. You're still $5 away from this ratty coffee I had this morning.
Really mad about that.
Okay.
I'm really mad about that coffee.
All right. So, leave us a review wherever you're listening.
Yeah.
Like us on social.
Share us with a friend.
Share us with a friend. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
That does sound like all the time we have this week. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Steven.
And every spoiler was intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.